So, hello everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, yeah. Tonight we'll be building on my my last lighting presentation. We're going to be going a little bit more in depth, as it were. And I mean that in more than one way, as we will be discussing how to use lighting to give your subjects depth, to distinguish them, and to define their shape. So let's get started. First, I'd like to qualify myself. In high school, I was your typical AV nerd, lighting for school plays, goofing off in the darkroom, and working for the local cable access TV station. In college, I studied cinematography at a technical school. I learned the ins and outs of all the equipment and the terms and concepts of lighting a scene. I spent a decade in the motion picture industry working on everything from commercials, music videos, features,
He spent
television.
10 years in the motion picture industry, studied cinematography. These are good.
And as a camera assistant, I was always right there, right next to the camera, even between takes when the crew was lighting. So this gave me a front row seat to observe a variety of techniques that were used in all kinds of situations. And I continue to apply these techniques as I shoot photos to this day. And this knowledge has, in part, brought me before you tonight, and I'm glad to share it with you and maybe even help you improve or see things in a new light, if you will. So without further ado, it looks like my dad just showed up. Hi, Dad. Without further ado, let's jump right in. So, breaking it down, tonight we will be looking at a quick recap of my previous presentation. We'll have a look at 3 primitive shapes with demonstrations on how light interacts with them, and I've included some real-world examples. We will bring those shapes together into one scene, and we'll look at how we can use light and shadow to keep our subjects separated. And then we'll wrap it all up, applying what we've learned by lighting a live person, woman, man,
Aaron.
camera, TV. Oy vey, right? He said it himself, folks. The J stands for genius. Anyway, enough of that. That probably went over just about everybody's head. Tonight we'll be lighting a live model. Aaron is with us tonight. Say hi, Aaron.
Hi, Aaron. Hi, Aaron.
Everyone says hi, Aaron. I'll take a brief break after each topic to answer any questions you folks have. And yeah, let's keep it going. So if you saw my last talk on lighting, this part will look very familiar. If you missed it, this might feel like it's a lot to absorb all at once, but don't worry, it'll all make sense in time. So when I observe or I'm lighting a scene, I consider how I can control each light source. The basic properties that I'm looking for are the light's intensity, the light's quality, the light's direction, and the light's color. And I'd like to take a second here and talk about, bear with me, the back side of my lens cap. Here's a shot of it. So we've all made the mistake of taking a shot only to find out that the lens cap was on the camera, right? Or is that just me? Anyway, the photo of the back of my lens cap teaches a valuable lesson. The camera is not what makes our photographs. It only captures them. There's something missing from the shot, right? And what's missing is light. Light is our medium. Light creates our photograph. A singer's voice is what makes a song, not the microphone. In ceramics, a potter needs to know how to heat the kiln, but it's the way that he shapes the clay that makes him an artist. As photographers, light is our clay, and these properties, intensity, quality, direction, and color, these are the ways that our clay, our light behaves as we sculpt the light into the photographs we want. So let's have a closer look at each of these properties, and we'll start with, let's start with intensity. That's what I usually do, start with intensity. So to control the light's intensity or its brightness, you can do any of these things. You can adjust the power level, like if you have a dimmer knob, you know, or maybe you've got some settings on your flash unit. If you're working with sunlight, you just give NASA a call. Maybe not. You can block out some light, close the blinds a little, or draw the curtains, add or remove a lampshade, pop in some filters, or you could even wait for a cloud to come in, or for the sun to get a little lower in the sky, start to set. I've done that, really. Or you can move the light, use your feet, but you've got to be careful. When you change the brightness on your subject, when you're changing the distance between the subject and your light, it's not quite like f-stop. Moving the light twice as far away makes it much darker than half. And this is because of the inverse square law. Yes. Math, right? Don't worry, it's not too complicated. Every time you change the distance between a light and the subject, its brightness changes by the inverse square of that distance. How about plain English, Nick, right? Okay, so the diagram shows how the light is spreading. As we get twice as far away from the light, we only have a quarter of the light. If we move 3 times as far away, we only have a 1/9 of the light. And it works the other way around too. If you half the distance, then you wind up with the light that's 4 times as bright. I think we all kind of get a grasp on that, right?
Right.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, we'll keep moving on. We'll talk about quality. Well, quality, what do I mean by quality in terms of light? I'm referring to the softness or the hardness of the light. While many people may consider soft light to be the nicest, I don't mean quality like, ooh, it's high quality. I mean, I don't mean that, oh, it's good light. In certain situations, hard light would be good light. So when I refer to quality of light, I mean how soft or hard the shadows are. Hard or soft describes the way that the light falling on the subject transitions from that highlight to the shadow. Hard light has crisp, defined edges at the shadows, while soft light, that transition is gradual and smooth. But what causes this? It has to do with how scattered or diffuse the light is. If the light rays are closer to parallel, the light's going to appear harder. And likewise, if the light rays are more scattered, the softer it'll look. And now maybe you're thinking, Nick, what? You're crazy. Maybe I'd understand this better if you showed me some animation. Let's have a look. Here we go. So direct sunlight, the rays are nearly parallel. There we go. This transition from light to shadow is abrupt. That's a sharp, crisp line. This is hard light. Now, look out, the clouds are moving in. And now our direct light, our nice parallel lines of our parallel rays of sunlight get hooked up by the clouds and they become diffused. The clouds diffuse the sunlight, scattering those rays. Now the transition from light to shadow on our apple is gradual. Now, can we control that transition? How can we make our light either harder or softer? And we can start with this light bulb and we'll put in a little piece of diffusion. Now, that without the diffusion, that'd be the hardest light you can get. But let's start with this little piece of diffusion. And that could be from a sheer curtain. Maybe we hung up a bed sheet. Maybe it's a photo umbrella or a softbox, anything that's going to scatter those rays. The light coming out of this diffuser is going to have some degree of softness. And in this example, we're going to say that it's a little bit soft. So let's make that diffuser even bigger. Now the light coming out of that diffuser is much softer. Maybe you've heard this referred to as wrapping the light. The larger diffusion smoothly distributes that light to more surfaces around the subject. And this is all I'm referring to when I say quality of light, how soft or how hard the transitions are to that shadow. Another way to soften the light to a limited extent is to move that diffusion closer to the subject. Really, you're just not giving those rays enough of an opportunity to get back to parallel. It's all about how scattered that light is. Let's keep moving on. Let's talk color. This one is quick and easy. First, I'll mention color temperature. We're all familiar with those white balance settings on our camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're there so that the camera can match the temperature of the light. Daylight looks bluish, tungsten's a little more orange. You know, our eyes adjust to this automatically. But a camera can only be set to one color temperature at a time. So we have to be careful when we have more than one light source in our scene. And we have to consider the color temperature of each one of those light sources. So imagine a subject lit by both a light bulb and a window light. How do we set our white balance? Do we set it to shade? Do we set it to tungsten? Somewhere in between? And that all depends on what you're doing creatively. There is no right or wrong answer. It's just important that we're aware of color temperature and that we're aware of the color temperature of each source. But in fact, having different colors of light in a scene can be helpful. It can help bring separation to our subject, pulling it out of the rest of the scene. Color will go a long way to distinguish different sources of light. In fact, I'm going to use different colored light gels in my demonstrations later on, and you're going to be able to see exactly where that light is coming from. So let's move on and tackle the next topic because it's a big one when we're talking about lighting in depth. It is light direction. And so light direction is just what it sounds like. It is where that light is coming from in relation to the subject and the camera. Put another way, it's how the light falls on the subject, which tells us where the light is coming from. This is what gives our subjects dimension. This is how we can understand three-dimensional shapes in a two-dimensional medium. How we know that's not a flat circle, that's a ball. It tells our brains that's not just a weird hexagon, that's a cube. The way that the light falls on the subject shows us not just its edges or its shapes, but it can also reveal the texture of the surface. Okay, so this might look familiar to if you've taken a class on drawing or painting. When you turn on a light, it will always cause these 5 things to happen, these 5 elements. We have our highlight here, which is the area that is being lit by the light itself. We have a specular highlight, which is the reflection of that light as seen by the camera. That's going to be more apparent with shinier objects. Excuse me. We have the core, which is this area where we have this transition from the highlight to the shadows. And that is where we're looking for the quality of light. It'll grow as the light gets softer. And we have the shadow area where none of the light happens to reach. And then we have the cast shadow. And the cast shadow is the area, the cast shadow, I got lost here, is the shadow of the object itself. And as it is projected onto its surroundings. And that could be the background, another object. So when we set up or adjust a light, we decide where we want these regions to be on our scene, and that dictates where the light should go. Each of these 5 items are like a chain extending from the light source, the highlight, the specular highlight, the core, the shadow, the cast shadow, always in that order, and that chain cannot be broken. These regions are always there. You cannot defeat them. You can only move them around. So you might ask, how do we move them around? Well, the most obvious is to move the light itself. We can move it up, down, left, right, in or out, move it any which way you want. You could move the subject. Say you have a portrait model nicely lit, except for a funny little shadow on their nose, or maybe a light's reflecting in their glasses. And so you just ask them to turn or tilt their head a little bit, and there you go. You've moved the subject. You've changed how the light falls on them. But let's say our subject is a 20-ton boulder, and we're shooting it in daylight, because who has a 20-ton boulder inside? Anyway, we've got our 20-ton boulder in this daylight. We're not moving the sun. And I'm sure not interested in moving that 20-ton boulder. So that leaves us with the last option, which is to move the camera. And in a natural light situation, that is going to be your #1 method of controlling the direction of the light, is to move yourself so that the light is in the right direction. That and choosing the right time of day. But I love the level of control that I have in the studio. And so when it comes to studio lighting, when I'm considering what I want to do, I like to start with a tried and true setup, which is best known as 3-point lighting. And I'll go over this just quickly so we can all understand the terms. I'm going to be using them as we continue, but I like to refer to each of the light sources by these names. So please get to know our 3 new friends. We have key, we have fill, and we have back. Key, fill, and back. So a little more about each of them. The key light is our main source of light, aptly named. It is usually the brightest, and this is the light that your exposure is based on. This is the light that makes your shadows. Kind of an interesting way to think about it. That's the light that makes your shadows. And we have the fill light, and this will bring some light back into the shadows, at least enough to retain some detail. And the fill light can help set the mood, but we'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. Finally, the backlight, whether it's shining on the subject or you're shining it on the background, it helps separate your subject from the background. So maybe you've heard of a hair light or a kicker or rim light. Those are all types of backlight. So for a basic 3-point lighting setup, here we have an overhead view. This is a guy, I guess he's kind of bald. There's his nose. We're looking down over the top. That's obviously the camera, right? So we draw an imaginary line from the camera to our subject. And the key light goes about 45 to 60 degrees around the subject on the side of the camera. In general, this light should be up high-ish, certainly above the subject's eye level. And it should point down about 45 degrees when it hits the subject. The fill light goes on the other side, 45 to about 90 degrees from the camera around the subject. And it should be somewhere around the subject's eye level. I find that the fill light is the one that I adjust the most to get the look just right. You're looking to bring in just some light back to the shadows made by the key, but the shadows from the fill light should be overpowered by the key light. You shouldn't see any shadows from that fill light. And so often the easiest way to accomplish this is to use a reflector, like a white foam board, a piece of fabric disc, some sort of a bounce. So instead of that light, let's toss in a nice bounce card. That's our preferred fill. And what you want to do is bounce the light from that key light. You find that sweet spot where it fills in the shadows just like you want. Move it in and out until you get the desired level of brightness. Now the backlight, here, and it might be up high, it might be down low. It all depends on the effect you're going for. If it's shining towards your camera though, you want to be careful not to let the light spill on your lens. How are we doing? I just got to notice that my internet's unstable. We hearing me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
No problem.
Okay, thumbs up. We'll keep going. So if it's shining towards your camera, you don't want it to hit your lens. Use a lens hood or find a way to block that light from hitting your lens, or you're going to get a flare. And, well, unless you're going for a flare, you know, have at it. But usually that's not what we're looking for. So one last quick note. Remember I was saying that fill light helps to set the mood. The amount of light from the key light in relation to the amount of light from the fill is called our lighting ratio. In this 1-to-1 example on the left, the key and the fill are the same brightness, and the subject just appears flat. She's just kind of two nostrils floating in open space, right? You know, in the next shot, we get down to 2-to-1, just reducing the fill by half, one stop, and we start to see more shape to the head, more definition in the face. And look at that, she's got a dimple. You know, we don't see that over here. How cute, she's got a dimple. So as we reduce the fill, the images get moodier. Just removing a little bit of fill light, we get more drama. So we can help set the mood by just adjusting that fill light. Quick, nice little side note there. So a little bit early, but a quick little break. When I say break, I just want to say I'm open to taking any questions we have about this quick recap, these quick items of just basic lighting. Anybody left scratching their head?
Thanks for the update.
I'm sorry?
I said thanks for the update. That was good.
Oh, that's great.
Review.
Oh, we're all up to speed.
Very easy to
All right, well, I hope you have more questions for me later, because that gives Aaron enough time to play Vanna White in the background.
Oh,
That wasn't Aaron.
We'll get to her soon. Okay, well, we'll keep moving on, but we'll get into the fun stuff. Let's start looking at some demonstrations. Let's start exploring these primitive shapes. So what are primitive shapes? They're the basic building blocks of every object around us. When we think about how we want to light our subject, any shape, any form can be broken down into one or a combination of these three-dimensional shapes. You have the sphere, the cube, and the cylinder. If I didn't give it all away with that teaser image this morning.
Yeah.
So as you look at your everyday surroundings, you start to recognize these shapes, and you'll start to see how the light interacts with them. And we can take that a step further. We can choose the way that the light falls on them, and we can do it in a way that looks appealing or looks compelling. So if you can understand how light interacts with these basic shapes, you'll be able to light anything. So going into these presentations, these are the things that we're going to have, that we're going to keep an eye out for. We're going to look at the direction of light, how moving the light around affects the appearance of the shape. We'll keep an eye out for those elements, the highlight, the shadow, the core. We'll look at both hard and soft light on each shape so you can see the effect that quality of light has. And we'll look at how to keep the surfaces of the shape distinct from each other, as well as separating those shapes from their surroundings. So it looks like, we're on to our first demonstration. Let's have a look at how we can light up a sphere. If I'm not already kind of big-ish in your display, you want to find a way to make me big now, because we're going to move over to a different camera, if all is good and well. Perhaps you see something that says EOS.
yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, it helps. A silly thing, you got to turn the camera on.
Take off the lens cap.
There you go.
Get a mirrorless camera so you don't have to wonder.
So, of course, this worked just fine in the test with Aaron.
Of
It's
course.
having issues now.
It will again.
Don't ask me why.
It's because it's your master's presentation.
Turn it off and on.
Yeah,
Blame it
All right,
on Murphy.
it must be Murphy. Well, the whole rest of the presentation hinges on this, so I hope we can fix it. I'm going to
That'll
try
go.
switching over.
I've already seen that.
Ada.
This is not good.
Turn
Is
it
there
off.
anything we
Turn
should
it
be doing?
on.
Oh yeah, we've tried that.
What does cancel the spotlight video mean up in the upper left? Is that,
I don't know.
I don't even see it.
I don't see it either.
Well, I think we need to stand by for my technical difficulties.
There we go. Oh,
There's Terry.
there's Terry.
There's Liz.
There's Liz.
Hi,
Cheryl.
That didn't
Hi,
seem to do it.
Cheryl.
Hi.
Maybe Erin needs to talk.
Yeah, hey, how about that?
Hey, yay! I keep thinking we need to wish like for Tinkerbell.
No, not on that slide either.
There we go.
There's the
There
ball.
we go.
Should we turn off speaker?
Here's my
Mute
sphere.
ourselves.
Also, I forgot to put this back. Shame on me. I was rehearsing and forgot to put this back to how we're supposed to start. But we look at that, and what do we see? Not a
Straight
sphere.
on.
We see a circle, because where's the light? It's directly behind the camera, right? It's in line with the camera. So that has no depth. It has no dimension. It's just a boring circle. So what do we do in order to give that dimension? We bring the light around to the side and bring the light around to the left side of the camera here. And now we see our 5 elements. We have our highlight. We have our specular highlight. You're just going to have to trust me, it's there. Like I said, you see it more in the shiny object, and we'll see it more in the examples coming up. And we have that core, and we have our shadow, and of course, our cast shadow. We have all 5 of those elements. And I've heard this when I first started out, that you've got to have the sun to your back. You want to light your subject with the sun to your back, and it's not true, folks. You still have dimension. It still looks like a shape. It still looks good even when you light it from the back. Heck, we can even bring the light from directly overhead, and we're still seeing those 5 elements. We still have our highlight, our core, our shadow, our cast shadow, and that silly specular highlights in there somewhere. And so let's have a look at what happens. One, when I turn off the ambient light in the room. Now maybe we see everything even better, right?
No.
But let's go ahead and now let's have a look at quality of light. This is a hard light, right? Because we're making this transition from this highlight side into this shadow side really rapidly. That's kind of a narrow core. We can really widen up that core by popping in a piece of diffusion. Here I have this photo umbrella. There, we can see this photo umbrella. I have great luck because I keep opening umbrellas and doors. Pop that umbrella in. Now look at that.
Excuse me.
That-
Could I ask if, pardon me, could I ask everybody to mute, because every time someone says something, your presentation's cutting out.
Oh, yeah.
If everybody could just mute their phones, that would help.
I'll mute all.
There we
Thank
go.
you.
Yeah.
Except for you, Nick, you're muted.
Oh, no.
How about now?
Perfect.
Okay.
Great. So going back with that quality of light, now it's nice and soft. We still have the highlight, we still have the shadow, but that core has just wrapped all the way around that transition. You can hardly even tell that it's moving. It's like this nice wide gradient. And remember, we can control that quality of light. Watch the cast shadow as I move the umbrella closer
Oh.
to the light. That shadow just got harder. So what's happening? My umbrella is not getting smaller, but the amount of light from the light that is the amount of light that is hitting the umbrella, it's hitting the umbrella in a smaller space. So that diffusion of the umbrella is effectively getting smaller. If I move the umbrella away my light is now filling that umbrella with light. And so the light is able to come around and wrap around that sphere and fill in all around that shape. And we get a nice, soft quality of light. Okay, let's see what else we can look at. We've looked at the umbrella. Let's look at separation. How can we separate this sphere from its background? Oh, pop that piece back in, and well, we can add a backlight. And now that gives us this nice rim around the back of the sphere, but it's also given us a new core and a new cast shadow. So by adding a light, we've added those 5 things in. Now there's 10 of them because we've got 2 lights. So while this doesn't really look all that great on a sphere, in my opinion, it looks really great on a human head. It just works out. I guess it's nice to not be round-headed. But since it doesn't look so great on a sphere, we have another option. We can pan this backlight off just into the background. And now we have, against this area of highlight, we have shadow on the background. And against this area of shadow, we have light on the background. And that gives great separation of that sphere from the background. And we can even go a step further. Let's turn that backlight off. And then I can come back to the key light. And now let's just pan that key light over ever so slightly. And look, it starts to light that background. And again, we have that separation. We have that dark background against the bright side, the brighter background against the shadow side. But wait, there's more. For a cheap, low payment of just one white piece of fabric, you have a bounce. Now we have our fill. We are doing those 3-point lighting. That 3-point lighting setup, we're doing it all with one light. That one key light is bouncing in and giving me the fill light and hitting the background to give me separation. So that's 3-point lighting with just the one light. And unfortunately, because I'm working in such a small space, I'm having a hard time catching the bounce light with this white reflector. So to really give you a dramatic effect of the light, I'll use this nice shiny silver one. And you can really see how the bounce light affects those shadows, but you still retain that nice core coming right through there. Okay, let's have a look at some real life examples of the sphere. Let's see here though. Is there a way for me to, well, I guess you can go ahead. Aaron's gonna Vanna White, so ignore the man behind the screen. Here, this example was kind of obvious, right? A ball, right? But from what we've learned, now we know exactly where that light is coming from. It's coming from the right. We've got this shadow being cast. We see that it's somewhat of a hardish kind of light. We've got this narrow core here, the highlight, the shadow side. Great. Great. We've got these all over here, right? Oh, kind of miss being out and about, out in the vineyards and wine tasting, right? But hey, at least we can look at these pretty photos. But where is the light coming from in this photo? It's coming from in back. That's where our highlight is. We're shooting right into the shadow side, and that's fine. It's okay for light to come from the back. And you see we've got that kind of smooth core there. I guess that counts as a backlight down there. Here is an excellent example of that specular highlight that we were talking about. You might want to call that the highlight, but no, that's the specular highlight. We're going to call this whole lit up side of the apple. That's the highlight side. There's our core right in there. It goes back into the shadow, the cast shadow, but this is the specular highlight. That sun is probably about 45 degrees off the photographer's left shoulder, and that is the reflection of the sun that we are seeing on the apple skin. We'll see it even more in this shot of this balloon. There's the photographer's light right there, that specular highlight. All of this is the highlight side. We get into the core, and then we even, because this is a nice shiny sphere, we have a reflection of their backlight. And do we think that is that backlight a hard or a soft source? Maybe it's kind of hard to tell from here. A little hint that gives it away is to look at the shadows of the legs of the chair. This is a soft source. Look at how soft the shadows are from those legs. But look at the shadows coming off the legs this way. They're all hard. So that has a hard quality of light. This, however, nice soft quality of light that core just wraps right around those eggs. And yeah, I know they're not perfectly spherical, but that's still an example of a sphere, even though it's an egg. I have that gorgeous soft light. That's certainly Nick's favorite. Okay, that brings us on to the cube. Funny thing about a cube is that you can only see 3 sides of it at a time. I know, right? Try as you might. There's 6 sides. You can only ever see 3 of them at a time. And we want to give each of those sides its own value. We have our highlight side, our shadow side, and this other strange kind of in-between side on top. But as it's lit right now, it's great. Each side has its own value. If I were to bring the key light up, now you see that both the top and the side have about the same value. It doesn't have as much dimension to it. Bring the light back down. And there we go. Those 3 sides each have their own value. So next, we'll have a look at our umbrella. Let's go ahead and pop in some soft light. And you might think, it's a cube. What difference is the soft light really going to be made? Surprise. Of course, look at that cast shadow. And also let's, I put my thing in backwards. Okay, there we go. We look at that cast shadow, it's almost kind of just disappearing off into nothing with that nice soft light. But we still have our highlight, our shadow, and our third side. Oh boy. So our separation works just the same way as it does on a sphere. And you kind of see I've already got it kind of panned off into the background. We can still use that method, or we can still use our backlight. That works just as well to give us dimension, to give us, separation from the background. Also, another thing that's helping us give a sense of dimension is that we haven't placed the cube with its edge straight at the camera. That's kind of just boring, right? We have a little more interest if we favor one side, even just a little bit, favor one side or the other. So if we were doing some sort of like product photography or something, we'd really, we'd put the Cheerios label right there. We put the logo right there on the highlight side to really call it out. Maybe we're doing something mysterious, and so then we can favor the shadow side a little more. But it's a creative choice. It's up to you. But just a little side note there that putting the cube right in the middle doesn't really. It's less interesting. But if you want to start playing around with light, I think that the cube is the easiest shape to practice with, because it really shows you where that light is coming from and how you're affecting it. So get a box and just light it every which way you can if you want to start playing with this. Let's start to have a look at what we can do if we start moving the light around again with the direction of light, we still get this dimension. We still get this value, these three values, even though this one is gone completely. And we can bring in our bounce. Let's bounce some of that light back in there, and it's not so dark. Come on, where'd you go? There it is. We got to kind of wiggle around and find it. There it is. Look at that. Look at that. Fantastic. Okay, we'll take a look at some real life examples of a cube. How about? That's almost kind of a cube. We've been seeing a few too many of these lately, right? Oh, but that's nice soft light. We look at this cast shadow. It softens right on out. Very fitting. Again with nice soft light. But you see here we have the three sides, the three different values. No, Nick, that's three. Okay, five. Three sides, three values. Up here too. Highlight, shadow, and kind of that in between side. Excuse me. Oh my, that was delicious dinner. These boxes just, they're just under that cloudy sunlight, nice soft light that you really hardly don't see any shadows to that whatsoever. That nice smooth soft light. Here the light much harder, and I kind of look at these boxes of film and think, I wish we would have favored a little more to this highlight side, see this highlight side a little more instead of having this edge straight on. But again, you see the three values, 1, 2, and 3. And with this shot of this building, the photographer has chosen to favor the highlight side of this building. But you have, we can't quite see the top, but we definitely have our two different, our highlight, our shadow gives it dimension. So yeah, let's look at the cylinders. Cylinders kind of a funny one, right? It combines our cube and our sphere in that it's got that round shape, but it has this edge to it, like the cube does. It's actually pretty easy to work with. If you want to move that core around, and we still have it, we still have our highlight, our core, our shadow, cast shadow, and that specular highlight's in there somewhere, I promise. But if we want to affect that core, we want to move that core around, we just move that light around, and that core moves. And if we want, we want to keep separation from this surface and the top. So if we want the top a little brighter, we just bring the light up. But now we're kind of getting into about the same tone between the top and the side. But the benefit is our cast shadow got shorter. So that's kind of like a lot of things in photography, right? It's all a compromise. If we want to have two separate tones on our highlight and our top, now our cast shadow got longer, which maybe that works for what you're going for, but it's just something you gotta be looking out for, something we're gonna be aware of. The same method works for separation. We pan off onto the background, or we turn on that backlight if we should so desire, and we still get that nice separation from the background. The still works just the same. And of course, I wouldn't deny you guys our umbrella. Let's look at that nice soft light, how it just wraps right around that cube. Oh, the soft light is Nick's favorite. Okay, so we'll have a quick look at some examples, real life examples of the cylinder. This was obviously photographed from above. We've got that bright light on the top. We see this core in here. not really the best separation on this first bale of hay here. My eye really goes to this guy in the back. Or we've got the core, we've got this shadowed side at the highlight up here. Great separation from the background. So yeah, if I were Paul Engel here, this photographer, I probably would have walked down to this guy instead. Keep that nice separation. You still get all these guys going off in the background. Some nice pottery, harking back to our initial conversation there. But yeah, nice soft light. Look how that core wraps all the way around, and that cast shadow is so soft. A little bit harder here. That narrower core. And then here, just to prove that we do in fact have that specular highlight. It is there. It does exist. And, on that can, it's all the way up and down that side. Really no fill light on this can. I think I would have shot that a little differently. I would have at least held up a napkin or something, right? That was probably shot in the diner. So let's bring it all together. Aaron's already got our 3 shapes there on the table. Thank you, Aaron White. So when we place multiple objects in a scene, we can take advantage of the way that we place them to give separation from one another. So here you can see how the shadow of the sphere is giving relief to the highlight of the cube. And even more so, we have this shadow from on the cube is giving relief to the highlight on the cylinder. Even more if I point the light in the right way. And then finally, if we adjust this backlight a little more, we have the cylinder is getting relief from the background, is being separated from the background. The shadow of the shadow on the cylinder here is backed up by that brightness on the background. Okay, so let's have a look at our friendly umbrella. I think this looks amazing when we get this in here. It just how that core really wraps around. It's just a fantastic look, and the shadows just all kind of melt. Now we really don't mind having that shadow of the sphere on the side of the cube anymore. It's just that kind of that gentle little nudge. In fact, I'm gonna go as far as I'm really gonna stick this umbrella in here, because I'm gonna pick this light up and we're gonna start moving it around. Some of the more of the effects that we can get with this nice soft light. Coming from straight overhead again. And now our shadows have dropped. The cast shadows have dropped straight down, but we still have all 5 of our elements. We have our highlight, our shadow, our cast shadows. I still have kind of an interesting look there. Or even if we go back, come back to the back here, let's have a look. Whoop. Very hard light. Even if we come from directly behind, maybe that's a little bit hard there. I think what I want to do is come around just ever so slightly to the one side so that we start to open up this core from the cylinder. So it gives it definition, but we still definitely have those 3 shapes all standing out in excellent sense of dimension. Let's see. I want to make sure that I hit everything on my list before we really jump back into it. But I think we've touched on everything other than maybe just looking at how we can bounce light back in. And when you have multiple subjects on your, when you're seeing, you can use them to hide a bounce, say say you've got either bigger objects that you're working with, or even these small objects. If I was able to get a tiny little scrap of cardboard covered in aluminum foil, I could hide it behind this cylinder and shine some of that light back onto this cube. Get a little bit more fill back in on that cube. Okay. So that's bringing it all together while keeping it all apart. And we can take another break time if we can unmute everybody. I'd be willing to field any questions that we might have.
Don't all those people already know everything about my.
Yeah. Nick?
Yes.
On my computer, I see the demonstration on a little teensy-tiny square where your face used to be, rather than on the entire screen.
Yeah. So are you in side-by-side mode?
I'm in it says view options, fit to window.
Mm-hmm.
No, you just have to take your mouse, and if you put it between your image and the screen that he's sharing with us, you can pull to the middle.
My image.
You can drag, if you're in speaker view.
Yeah, speaker view.
To be in speaker view.
There you go. Speaker view.
Where do you get speaker view then?
Up at the top on the right-hand side, gallery view.
Hover around the edge and you'll see things pop up.
Yeah, I'm in show active speaker video.
Are you using a Mac?
Yeah.
Okay, I know.
Now I can see everybody.
Put it back to the
There's
side.
gallery view and there's speaker view, and you want to be in speaker view. It should be up at the top. Like you have, or there's view options.
Yeah, I've got grid view that I show grid view, and that's us. Show thumbnail video and show active speaker video. And the other one is a minus, which is to hide the
I
thumbnail.
think active speaker video.
Speaker view.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've had it on.
Okay, then if you take your mouse to the left of whoever's speaking,
Uh-huh.
kind of put it in the middle there, do you see a line come down and the ability to move your screen bigger or smaller?
Like a click and drag.
I click and drag Nick. Okay, you're in the middle now. Oh, let me see.
No, on the edge of me. It should resize. You're trying to drag the edge to resize my window.
Oh, yeah. I got you.
Sliding
Okay.
There you
I
go.
can see Pat really big.
Sliding window.
Nick,
And Tricia.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't think of anything to ask you. You're doing brilliantly.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm beginning to understand what lighting is about.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. Well,
Quite repeatedly.
that's fantastic, and you know, I'm glad that we got everybody set up, because that gave Aaron just enough time to set mostly everything else up. We're missing a couple of pieces, so I'm gonna lend her a hand. You guys feel free to talk amongst yourselves.
Uh-huh.
Serve the drinks now.
Yeah, great time.
I'm loving the humor.
Oh, he's so delightful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny.
And I'm understanding the lighting better than the last time when there was all the lumens and the
Yeah.
kind of lighting. And
I simplified that, and I think that certainly helped. Ooh, it's pink in here.
Nice.
Or no, everybody, your camera's messed up. It's not me. Do not attempt to adjust your television.
Where are the bunnies?
Oh, the bunnies are they're probably taking a nap after eating dinner. but they're in their respective rooms. Okay.
My name's Dad.
I've tried multiple times to understand lighting with various videos, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is the first time that it's making sense to me. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, let's wrap it all up by applying these that we just covered. Let's see. Couple of things. I'm still making a few adjustments here. I'll get you guys ready to go. But let's swap this back over to my, whoops, not that one. Oh, it's doing it again. Let's switch it back to the technical difficulties.
Lot to learn.
Did it help when we were all muted?
Oh, I think it did.
Okay.
Okay, I'll mute everyone, and then Nick, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
All right.
Now, does everybody hear me?
Yes.
I can't hear you. Give me a thumbs up. Okay, good. All right, so there's Erin. Now we have her. And I have now, as I promised, I have color-coded my lights so we can really see what is going on here. And we have this key light in blue that is coming in on her face very nicely. Remember I was saying though about that shadow. Erin, let's turn your head a little bit towards me, maybe chin down. Look, oh, kind of fix that shadow, or maybe made it worse. I don't know. We can move this around and move that core around as we see fit. And we have this fill light coming in, this nice magenta filling in this from the side. Backlight, the nice yellow light on the background. Or remember I was saying when we were last looking at that sphere, how we can get nice, beautiful backlight on human beings. I'm having trouble seeing exactly what I'm doing, but it's not quite there. Forgive me, folks. The backlight is in the wrong part of the room for me to watch the monitor and light at the same time. Yeah, now we're starting to get a little bit of that there it is, right? Now we're starting to get that yellow kick down the side of her, down the side of her eye there. And we can bring the level up a little. That certainly helps. And now that's beautiful light, especially with her nice curly hair. Those curls really pop out with that yellow, that hair light coming in from behind. We can really call it out, coming up from directly overhead. Nice hair light in there too. But remember what we did early on with the sphere. We lit the whole scene, all three lighting sources with just the one light. So let's go ahead. Let's get rid of this fill light so that it's not giving us those extra shadows. And we'll say, hey, Erin, you thought you were done, gonna sit down there in the chair. Your thought your work was all done. Go ahead, hold that bounce and just hold it in there till you feel that light is really really bugging your eye. And we can turn off that backlight too. Go away, backlight. That backlight goes away, and now we have just that nice separation from the key light bouncing back onto the background. And since we only have the one light, it doesn't really need to be blue anymore. We can, and there we go. A gorgeous looking portrait, which, you know, we can work it a little more. We can bring this key light forward. It's, you know, maybe it's unfortunate that it's such hard light. Maybe we back it up. Remember that inverse square law, back it up. And that'll also help fill that bounce even more to help soften up that fill light. Let's try swapping out the fill, that shiny fill, for a nice white fill light, even softer in that fill. Or it'll affect our, you know, it'll have less of an effect on our background, I think. We'll have as much of a gradient, but if we pop in Nick's favorite umbrella, now that nice soft light just wants to wrap all the way around. Go ahead. Now we don't really, you know, we don't really mind that nose shadow so much anymore. Now we really softened it up, and that I think that's a gorgeous photo. Of course it is, because it has Aaron in it. And I, you know, that's amazing. We've done that with just one light, and it's as simple as that. And it's unfortunate that the camera manufacturers have put the flash on the camera, because as we've learned tonight, that's the worst place for it. You know? Ooh, I'm still purple. And let's see. So that's, you know, that's what I have for tonight, folks. Other than you know, a quick last thank you. Thank you to everybody. I hope that the presentation has inspired you to experiment with lighting, especially given how often we're at home and in these sheltered times. I'd like to personally thank those who've helped me on my journey to the master's level. So thank you to the officers of the club, without whom none of this would be possible. Also to those who coordinate all the little extra activities we do, like field trips and critiques, and give us unique opportunities to shoot and learn. And thank you to my fellow competitors. You didn't make my advancement easy. And thank you to the Good Enoughs for lending a fresh set of critical eyes to my work, especially Nancy, who kicked my ass into gear more times than I care to admit. And thanks, last but far from least, thank you to Aaron, my viewfinder, on countless hikes and trips and adventures. You've had the wherewithal to stop, take in the view, and say, look at that. I wouldn't want to have anyone else by my side. And also, I saw my dad check in. Thank you to my parents. Without you, I'd be nothing. And with that, good night, everyone. Be healthy and stay safe.
Thanks, Nick.
That was wonderful.
Great. Thank you, Aaron.
Really good.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
I want to see the Connecticut parents.
Oh yeah, there's my dad there in the red shirt.
Oh, good mom.
Ellen came from. Yeah.
Checking in from Florida.
Oh, they're in Florida. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Be safe, you guys.
Wow, you did good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Very good.
Very, very
Thank you.
nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
Nice job, Nick. So yeah, we learned something.
Thank you. Yeah.
No.
And Aaron.